You're listening to the Beat Motel Zine podcast, and we need to warn you that we use words like shit, bollocks, scrotix, fuck, anarcho-syndicalist, and cunt, and we don't normally beat those words out, apart from the word cunt, because we're not total animals. Now, we know as well as you that your children can hear these words on any street in Britain, possibly any street anywhere in the world, but we also appreciate that you may not want to invite these words into your home if you have children or sensitive pets nearby whilst listening to this podcast.
Nah, fuck 'em.
So listener discretion is advised. That being said, if your children aren't allergic to hearing words like fuck, shit, buttocks or hind penis, they might learn something from listening to this podcast, although probably not, because the quality of our educational content is quite poor. So there you go, fuckers, buckle in and let's get started.
So, hello, welcome to Beat Motel. We are recording, and I'm hosting more this week because Andrew's feeling a bit under the weather. We're not in America, so you don't need to send donations because he's feeling a bit under the weather.
Send donations. No, we have the NHS, and I have access to very cheap drugs. You know, paracetamol's like 23 pence a pack or something now.
But is the NHS actually working these days? There's all these, I mean, living from abroad, the Guardian says it's consistently under crisis, and you can't get anything.
There are, I mean, people aren't banging saucepans on the doorstep anymore, and I think that's become the judge of how good things are. Although that being said, I needed to have a follow-up appointment about blood pressure because they told me I was a fat knacker, so I'm no longer a fat knacker. But the online booking system doesn't work, so I just walk there to book appointments. It's just easier and it's nicer. And I was stood in the queue, and this woman in front of me had this hacking cough, and I can remember thinking, this is last Wednesday, I can remember thinking, I hope I don't get that. That sounds sick. I like the fact you're in Helsinki putting for listeners. Sam's putting what do you call it? Alcohol gel on his hands. Like he's
No.
Oh, is it? No, I thought you were worried you might get. Oh, he's rubbing drugs onto his hands. I thought you were worried you might get sick, like over the airwaves.
I'm trying to get a high through using the Body Shop's hemp hand moisturizer because it's so fucking dry now. So it's always so dry.
You know they've gone bust.
Yeah, which I'm hoping, frankly, if they go bust and they sell the stock off for cheap. I don't know if they've gone bust globally or just bust in the UK.
Well, my sister's part of the pyramid scheme thing, so she's stockpiling the vitamin C. Do you want me to ask her to get some? Send us a message afterwards to remind me because she's getting it all. She's getting it quite cheap.
The hemp moisturizer stuff is really good in Finland.
What flavour is that one?
Just hemp.
Actually, can you just take a picture and send it to me because I won't retain any of this information.
After this it's not interesting. Let's do songs of the week. Such a good album.
It's
the only album I like of theirs. I don't like nothing else has clicked whatsoever. No, that album is just from start to finish is astonishing.
I entirely agree. So that's the Lawrence Arms, Great Lakes, Great Escapes, and I chose it partly because how long have bands been doing that, like lo-fi start to a song? It's almost become like a genre of its own, hasn't it?
It's sort of that loud quiet thing. Or quite loud thing. I guess everybody sort of gives it to the Pixies, who really sort of pioneered it, who really made it a thing.
I suppose they did, but we saw them at Brackrock, didn't we?
Pixies?
No. I have seen the Pixies. I saw them at Reading, but I was not in a state of mind.
That's interesting. I saw the Pixies, and a good friend of mine, is a quantum physicist, nuclear physicist, not nuclear physicist, who was funded by the American government, as far as I can understand. All his projects are funded by the American government.
I almost said his name then. Didn't mean to dox
Um,
him.
but well, everybody knows you can find him on websites. But anyway,
Sam's introduction to the internet.
you can find him on OnlyFans. OnlyFans for
Wow,
people
someone
really,
gave him
really into quantum physicists.
Wow, look, someone gave him £100,000 tip. Who was that? Oh, it's the American government.
But no, we went to see the Pixies, and when they reformed and they were playing Brixton Academy, and we went to not the most hygienic looking restaurant beforehand in Brixton, and it was a sort of nominally Chinese sort of food. I would say not really, considering what I know now about it. British Chinese sort of old school fare. And I said to him, "Don't eat the meat. I wouldn't trust it here. Go for something vegan or vegetarian." He trusted the meat, and beforehand, before we got between the restaurant and the venue, which was about a 5 minute walk, he ended up throwing up in a bin.
Oh man,
Which
you
is
know,
body just going, "Nope, not doing this."
I know, no, you mean like notionally Chinese, like it's the guy from the streets summarizes it in crap in plastic trays. Just that sort of brightly coloured stuff, and like any Chinese person would be like, "What the hell is this?"
But
And there are a lot of Chinese people, so that survey might take a while. But no, we saw Lawrence Arms at Bragg Rock.
Yeah, I've interviewed them.
Have you?
Yeah. I saw them in, God, I can't remember. Maybe the Astoria, London Astoria, when it doesn't open.
Oh,
It doesn't not.
don't
And
look for it; it's no longer there.
I went through a phase when I was doing stuff for Punk News where I didn't really want to interview bands, but the PR people said you can only have guest list if you're
Oh,
interviewing bands, and
well,
I said, okay, I'll
well,
interview them.
well, I did that a few times, but they were on Fat Wreck at the time,
Yeah.
so that would have been the lovely German lady. What was
Oh,
her
I,
name?
I don't know, but I'm not very good at creating relationships with these people. But I was like, oh, that's fair enough. I understand that sort of side of things. Um, and it was a great interview. The guy was lovely, really nice. He was
It's
sort of at that. He was sort of at that pissed. I think I've talked about this before, but he was at that pissed. Like he was that level of drunk where you don't really know to shut up, which is
I know
such
who
a
it was then.
nice position as an interviewer.
As an interviewer, yeah. So that was
Yeah,
the bassist, sort of
yeah,
main singer. When we saw him at Bragg Rock, he was blattered.
yeah. Oh, didn't
And
he start insulting bands and stuff? He started taking the piss out of them or something.
he did, but in that again, that sort of level of drunkenness, I couldn't tell if he actually meant it. I mean, it's
I
not like
couldn't
there's
tell
a
if his
huge.
the rest of the other two guys were a bit annoyed with him either, going,
He, he
calm down a
was
bit.
he was a bit all over the place, and to be honest, I was a little disappointed. I know, like in especially in punk, it's not. No one owes you anything. I kind of like the whole thing of bands go on stage and fuck it, you get what you want, and so you get what you get. Rather than like a polished routine, and that's absolutely what I love. But I was a bit like, oh man, that was like the one band at the whole festival I was really looking forward to.
I don't know if it's you get what you get but I mean, I get this is the things that I think those touring bands have to make life entertaining for themselves somehow,
Mm.
but at the same time, it's sort of a bit depressing when that's the only way they can make it entertaining for themselves. There'd be a bit of a I don't know. My memory is that it was a bit of a bell end. But anyway, this is not a bell end, and this is my track of the week.
Tell me.
Laura Jane Grace. good, so good. It made
Hang on, I
Andrew
can't hear
cough
you.
a
I
lot.
can't hear you.
Change. Andrew just changed hats.
Well, I've changed from Mid Suffolk Light Railway to Starfoil International, which is a Dutch company that does foiling.
Why?
Yeah, when you press play on that clip, I immediately was like, "This is cool. I like this. I don't know what it is. I like this. It's got the sort of the slight the tension and the sort of the stabbiness of the sort of punk I like." And yeah, and then Laura Jane's voice came in, and it's like, I've not heard that. Thank you
Yeah,
so much.
that
That's,
seriously, for my money, the last Laura Jane Grace, the new Laura Jane Grace album, "Hole in My Head," is the best album she's put out in since the last Against Me album, Shapeshift with Me. And I actually really rate that last Against Me album. I think musically, in a way, I rate it higher than um, Transgender Dysmorphia.
I do because it's against
Blues.
me. We've talked about it before for
Yeah,
sure, but it's against me reaching the right place to be.
yeah, and like the album that deals with all the I can't bad memory. Uh, but that album is a really important album. I'm not going to take it away from that whatsoever. Transgender Dysmorphia Blues. That album is a really, really important album. Not just for Against Me, but I think for a lot of people who identify with sort of issues around those things that she's singing. But musically, it is a very sort of concentrated sort of. It's musically because of the process of making it. The story of the making of that album is really
Mm.
interesting. They lost their studio, they had to put it back
Burnt
together again, and
down,
all.
didn't it?
The band sort of broke down. It was just her and James Bowman at a point, and then friends sort of came in to save them. And it's a really sort of or help them out, right, rather than save them. But it's a really cool sort of story around that album. But then Shapeshift with Me to me is like an album where they sort of rediscovered their panache for just writing, something, just sort of like, oh, we've done the important thing. Let's just have fun again. And they still had those songwriting chops. And I think that was the best album they put together musically since New Wave for me.
Mm.
And then this, and I liked one of the albums Laura Jane Grace did in the interim between Shapeshift with Me and I can't remember what it was called. I should look these up really. Do some research then. Fuck off now. You do some research. That's my life doing research. I don't want to research for this. So she did, yeah. Was it Bought to Rot, which was good. That's a good album. Then she did Stay Alive, which was apparently demos. They were
Mm.
like she did it with Steve Albini, and it
Wow,
was but it's all demos of what should have been Against Me songs apparently, and
it
they sort of
sounds like that though.
and I quite like the fact that this is this album feels like demos as well, and there's some songs that just like scream out for James Bowman's backing vocals. Like that Laura Jane Grace has in mind the same sort of backing vocals that James Bowman is so fucking good at. So incredibly good at. And there's some points where I just want to hear James sing behind her, and I want to hear, you want to hear a real drum kit behind what she's playing, and but the whole album is just fantastic, and I can't say anything bad about it. I think she's really come out slamming.
There's loads of rumours abound on Reddit, and people are trying to read. Obviously, she's doing press because there's an album out, so people are always trying to read between the lines, and it equally fascinates me and pisses me off that people are always trying to figure out if Against Me are gonna come back. And of course, I want to know that, but I also think just give her, just leave that
Embrace
just for
what's
a minute.
there rather than sort of live through that. I mean, I'd love to see you guys also, but yeah, and also I have read a few interviews with and she says that you know, I think her and they basically all had a bit of a the band had a bit of a breakdown when, and they weren't really enjoying themselves when, what's it called, COVID hit. And so they stopped talking to each other for a while. Now her and James apparently are talking to each other again. And I don't know about the other two or who the drummer would be, but I doubt they'd struggle to fill that spot. And she said, "Yeah, let's see what happens."
I think they'd only just got Andrew back in the band, hadn't they? The
Yeah,
bassist.
yeah, but and actually, what this album sort of hits at certain points is that Laura Jane Grace knows a good bass line as well.
Mm.
I have to say, it's sort of,
So
and
it's not a band then; it is her playing everything.
well, the drums I think are a drum machine on it.
Sounds it's hard to tell these days. No, I
But
tell
it's
you
just
what.
it's the constant beat without any fills or without anything. So I'm
I
going
think
drum
it's an
machine.
aesthetic choice though, because that can you just play a little bit of the clip again? Just play me like a few seconds. At this level, that kick drum's too perfect. It's a layered kick, and there's a kick with a tambourine and other stuff, and that sounds more like, we say drum machine, not like I'm not going to point at stuff. There's drum machines in the room, not that kind of thing, but more like a pedal called a Dr. Rhythm made by Boss that was used in like industrial stuff and some early Juice and Mary chain, and it's quite an aesthetic choice rather than being we haven't got a drummer, or a Carter in the Unstoppable Sex Machine, same thing. It's not let's try and replicate human drummer. It's like let's just get the beat going and just leave that to one side, rather than it being all big fills and
Well, this is. I mean, there's a certain aesthetic choice that she sort of makes a lot of the time when she does non against me stuff, which is quite a lo-fi aesthetic. When she does like stuff under her own name without a band. If she does a band, she goes for an aesthetic, but a higher level aesthetic. But with this stuff, it is like it's lo-fi. It sounds, and this is why it's to me, it's like it sounds like they're well-rounded songs, but at the same time, the layering of vocals that she puts on it, it's sort of like it's reminiscent of Against Me lead backing trade-off stuff, and
I absolutely agree.
that's why it sort of like, for me, it's just begs, but it's got a great energy to it, and whatever she does, I'd love to see that stuff, the current material live, because I think it has that. And also, I have to say, for me, I can relate more to the lyrics than I have been able to for a while, on a lot of it, because I think she's sort of written less of, in a way, she's written more about um, aging experience and sort of personal experience rather than a particularly sort of identity-based experience.
I'm really looking forward to hearing that. As soon as the singing started, I also realised that there's such a direct line between this and Heartburns.
Mm.
And it's a very similar thing. It's really tight. It's really like claustrophobic.
Yeah.
But I think it's. Oh God, I'm really looking forward to hearing that. Thank you, Sam. That's been better than fucking paracetamol. That has. I mean, I'm still sweaty and headachy and want to go back to bed, but
No, you're not allowed to, because you're going to have to endure about 40 minutes of your favourite episode.
Well, okay. So bear with a minute. Hang on.
Andrew is changing hats again. What are we now?
Toronto Blue Jays. I don't know why. I think my parents went to Toronto and bought me a baseball cap.
Sure, fair enough. You got to bring back something. So, what are we? What's the topic today, Andrew?
Metal liquor.
And what's your impression of Metallica? Let's get this out of the way. What's your thoughts? How do you feel about
I
them?
straight up don't get it. Every time I've heard Metallica, there's like the big obvious riffs like Enter Sandman, and I've watched a lot of the live stuff. They headlined Glastonbury a few years ago and played for 16 hours, and I don't know. I can't find a hook. in a lot of Metallica stuff. I don't know.
Really?
I don't know what to pin stuff on, and the production of the older stuff with the no bass guitar, it just sounds really strange to me. And I thought that the more into metal I got, the more I'd understand Metallica. I thought that if they are, you see it like like a musical pyramid scheme with like Metallica at the top, like being sonically and whatever supported by lots of bands down the bottom. So like bottom part of the pyramid's bands playing metal in pubs, middle is bands sort of making a living for it, and then the top's Metallica. I thought, if they're like a summing of all those things, I thought I'd start to understand it the more I got into metal. But what I like about so much metal is how aggressive a lot of it is. For anyone who doesn't know me, I'm not an aggressive person, but it's the same reason I love techno. It's the sonic aggression. But I'm yet to hear any Metallica that either has a hook that I can catch on to. That being said, the last episode you did play a solo that was really, really, really good. So what do you hope's going to come out of this episode?
Well, maybe not that you want to go back and listen to them, but you can sort of appreciate why they're knit together, and they're sort of maybe as not as big as it's impossible to sort of justify why they're as big as they are. They're one of the biggest things in music ever. They've sold. Was it? I noted it down. They have sold just one album has sold 16 million copies in the US alone. The Black Album.
In the US.
Yeah, worldwide they've sold over 125 million records.
That's wild. Is the Black Album the one that they were? I watched that.
That's Enter Sandman.
What's the documentary, like the 4 hour?
Oh, Anger. No, that one's considered like a dud, like a necessary process for the band.
Because I thought they all came across as complete bellends. Apart from who's the guitarist with the curly hair?
Kirk Hammett.
Yeah, he seemed quite nice.
And Les Claypool was a good friend for him. They went to school together.
Oh, wow.
And Kirk Hammett was Les Claypool's drug dealer.
Speaking of drugs, before we go any further, drugs are bad, McKay and all that joke, but I am going to do some drugs on the recording. I'm doing paracetamol and ibuprofen.
Oh, yeah.
I was going to put them in a line, and I thought that would be a stupid idea, so I didn't do it. Right, I'm ready.
Yeah, I don't think that album puts that stuff puts them in the front side. But let's start the music. So, first thing, you can't hear the bass. So what do you think that was?
I could hear bass in that. I mean, it's still sort of thinned out, and it's because I know everything gets compressed while we're recording this, and then the output thing always sounds okay.
But that solo was the bass. That was the bass.
Fuck.
That's the bass solo.
With another bass line underneath it.
Yeah.
That's just greedy.
That's Cliff Burton, who was sort of, I read an article once that you can tell Metallica by their bassist in a way. And he was apparently classically trained, and he seemed to bring into Metallica a lot of drama and a lot of layering. He really knew, he seemed to bring sort of orchestration to the first, I would say not the first album, but the second and third albums, Master of Puppets and Ride the Lightning. And, I was listening to that. but you're right. The tone doesn't get to what we expect of a modern bass tone.
Modern. What era is this? What year is that?
This is 1984, 85.
Oh no, that bass sounded, but not the one in the background, but the one doing the solo sounded absolutely fucking great. But that is not a good era for that kind of production.
No, this is it. They suffer. I think Metallica have always suffered. Always suffered from sort of a slightly questionable production. Not the Black Album, which is one of the greatest sounds ever in terms of just fullness of things, but you can hear the bass, and you can hear the bass at very choice times. And actually, I would say in the second two albums, because I don't like the first album, Kill 'Em All shit. It is. I don't fucking care. It's a bad album. Um, and Ride the Lightning and Master of Puppets are masterpieces, though. And you can hear the bass, and the bass is doing it. Goes for he does he does a lot with the bass. He is that sort of very versatile bassist who can play just the back up the guitars, but he can also play these sort of like really intricate lines, and right, a bass solo that sounds as good as any guitar solo.
That has piqued my interest enough so that hang on.
This is a visual gag for a podcast.
I put on my favourite cap, which is Ditz, band
Nice.
band from Brighton.
No.
That has piqued my interest. That is interesting.
So there is in the first, I would say when they sort of slow it down a bit and when they get a bit more orchestral in Ride the Lightning and Master of Puppets albums, there's a lot more going on musically. There's a lot of intricacy going on, and then they also sort of so we're going to move on next to this very controversial. So we've gone from bass and a lot of bass, very high in the mix, prominent, to this.
What the fuck is up with that mix? Bloody hell, that kick is like, I'm sure even people who aren't musicians know, there's only so many frequencies you can cram onto a recording, and it's like building a brick wall. If the kick drum's going to occupy this frequency, you have to get other stuff away from it. The kick's occupying like the bottom third of the spectrum. It's just there's everything there, which makes the guitar so thin at the top. And then the vocals come in, and the vocals occupy like 60% of the spectrum in the middle. But that kick, it's not good. I mean, what era is that then?
That's 87. That's after the death of Cliff Burton, who died tragically in a tour bus accident in Sweden. And it's the first album with, what's it, 88 was that one? Maybe 88. And Justice for All is the album. And that was the first album with Jason Newsted, who was in his own right a very, very good bass player and a very good songwriter. But there's a myriad of sort of things about that mix. That mix is one of the first massively controversial things.
Bold choice, I'll give it that.
There's sort of different stories. Apparently, Jason Newsted was when he joined the band, and this sort of goes to that thing about they can be arseholes, Metallica, particularly sort of James Hetfield and Lars Ulrich. They were not dealing with the death of a very good friend very well, and they basically put Jason Newsted through the ringer. And one of the ways they put him through the ringer is to get him to play these really, really intricate bass lines to really quite difficult riffs and just kill it in the mix.
It's just not there. I didn't hear it at all.
It's not there. It's not there.
Didn't they
Um,
release an album called Justice for Jason?
no, that's a YouTube thing where people have re-recorded what they think is the bass stuff and put it in the mix, and it sounds it sounds better.
So were they a big band at that point? I know they're touring in Europe. They can't be doing badly, but were
Yeah,
they?
um, they were sort of if you so Master of Puppets was a big album, and on and Justice for All they got the Grammy what's it called? They were sort of put up for a Grammy, and that's the album with One, which is sort of their one of the sort of the songs they became known for.
It's the U2 moment.
Yeah, um, uh, and this one is all about the transition. That sort of that. So they go from one riff to another. And just
I like that leaping around. No, I think that transition's cool, but just where's the bass? So okay, so
yeah, the mix is inexcusable, but it's I mean this is this problem, and we've talked about this before. Like you sometimes hear stuff recorded in the 70s, 80s, particularly sort of stuff around like metal and hardcore, where the just if you're not introduced to it at the right time, you'll never get past that stuff, frankly.
that might well be what happened with me and Metallica,
Yeah.
because I would have heard them before the Black Album.
I was listening to, frankly, I was listening to a Minor Threat song, Minor Threat, earlier today in headphones. Sounds like shit.
Yeah. We've gone on about this in so much detail over the last 63, 63 episodes, but yeah, if I had heard that, I would have gone. That would have put me off. That sort of sounding metal put me off so much of it, because this kind of, what is it? They're not really thrash, are they? I thought early stuff was thrash, but it's what are they, just heavy metal, or are they like a particular
I
genre?
would classify them the early stuff as thrash myself, but I can't be bothered with. I mean, I think there's a certain point where they are thrash, and there's a certain point where it's just a marketing tool.
Because I didn't get that kind of music until the production got better. So when I first heard Power Trip,
Mm.
which is not a million miles away from either of those, from the second clip you played, and because the production's so great, I absolutely loved it and just instantly adhered to it, like absolutely instantly. Okay, so far we're one up, one down.
One day.
We're still neutral.
And so this is like I couldn't pick a point of this song, and I also this is like the most obvious thing ever of Metallica.
Where's it going? That's actually a bit of a tease.
Yeah,
Is it going to go?
that whole song is like it's everything they did in Ride the Lightning and Master of Puppets, so perfected and put together, and it's it does everything. But also, I sometimes feel like Lars Ulrich has really given us short, sort of as a drummer, as a musician, because if you listen to that that drum fill, he sort of does this nice little, he sort of starts slow and does this nice little roll, and then just ends with a splat. And it's really he sometimes he's limited, but he also has style within that.
I've never understood why he seems to get so much shit. It's just like it's like a meme almost that people do
Mm.
it without actually having any real good cause. I've never had a problem with any of his drumming. So people go, well, he's not the best drummer. Like, who gives a fuck? If you're only
But
going to listen to music because it's the best of the best, listen to jazz and listen to nothing else. Go on, fuck you, fuck off.
I have to say, One of my problems with jazz is that, frankly, they don't have very good riffs a lot of the time.
Yes, you can be the best musician, but it doesn't mean you're the most creative performer.
No, or you know what?
Hey, we've fixed music. That's it. That's it. We've summed it all up.
But one of the things about that is they just have, when they're on form, they have riffs for days. They go through I don't know how many riffs and variation of riffs in that song, but every single riff in Master of Puppets is fucking incredible.
So that's from Master of Muppets. So that's mid 80s or late 80s.
86.
86. God, the change that this band went through is so swift. Okay, so I can see now that you could have a transitional record. I mean, compared to 60s bands that were putting out 3 albums a year, a bit different, but they weren't touring the fuck out of the world, were they? They were just in a studio blatting them out and having session musicians like Jimmy Page forced on them and all that. But yeah, I can see the God, sorry, that phrase, having Jimmy Page forced on you. Oh God, that's thrown me. I thought I was doing quite well so far, but
Andrew just has to take a quick toilet break. So
hang on.
Go with Jimmy Page. Oh, we're going for another one. What the fuck's this?
Oh,
these are your war medals, are they?
I think you bought me this.
No, I don't think I did.
You did?
What is it?
Oh, look, it's all covered in like... You did? I thought that was you who bought that for me.
Is it all Soviet badges and stuff?
I
don't remember that.
Might be my parents when they went to Moscow. I tell you what, they've got small heads in the Russian army. Okay, that'll have to do.
Don't say that. There'll be people around your place now.
Actually, no, I don't want that on my head.
What are we doing?
Yeah,
allotment hat. Sensible hat. It's like a elongated version of Black Sabbath.
Oh. Oh man, it hurts my left nut. I've coughed so much now. It makes one of my nuts jump every time I cough. Like a little string between my lungs and a little boink, boink. Which is the thing, apparently.
I think the thing for me is that in the first, Ride the Lightning, For Whom the Bell Tolls, and Justice for All. Less than Justice for All, but I still love it because I grew up on it. They just have riffs, endlessly brilliant, amazing riffs.
Absolutely do. So why do you hate, if you can tolerate the bad production of the album you played a minute ago?
Justice for All.
What is it about the first album you don't like?
The riffs.
No, just bad
riffs.
The riffs
are weak.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just the riffs are. So apparently, a lot of that album was written by Dave Mustaine, who became or Dave Megadeth. Megadave,
the only person who's disappointed to sell 50 million albums.
Yeah, and it's a bit too the early Megadeth stuff, and the first Metallica album, a bit too new wave of British heavy metal for me, which is a genre I never really enjoyed. I don't really like that Black Sabbath. I'm not Black Sabbath. I don't really like that Iron Maiden sort of side of things.
It's funny, yeah. We've never talked about Iron Maiden at all.
I mean, I like Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, but I don't know. There's something a bit. It's so cheesy.
So pantomime. That's what puts me off.
Yeah, pantomime's a much better way of describing it. It's pantomime.
And also, I can't get past Bruce Banner or whatever the singer's called. It's not Bruce Banner, is it?
Bruce Springsteen?
Bruce Jet Plane. What's his name? He's another fucking Tory cheesemaker.
Bruce Dickinson.
That's the one. he's another Tory.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't really. He does seem like a bit of a prat. But um, I just yeah, pantomime is a really good way of sort of saying it, and it's loud and it's noisy, but it's not aggressive.
No, it's so we're such a contradictory bastards. I suppose I am, because I hate the pantomime of that kind of thing. Yeah, I like black metal, which is just like, mind you, I don't really like the black metal that is all pantomime. I like the black metal that is blokes in jeans and t-shirts with non-spiky guitars just playing fast. I don't like the all the really the blood and chainsaws and stuff.
I mean, yeah, there's sort of that's an interesting thing of like picking and choosing what part of a genre you sort of identify with. Um, and that whole, I guess we talked about it a little bit last week around Mayhem and the sort of relationship with the the pantomime of sort of church burnings and
Yeah, the different thing is for them
homophobic killings.
it wasn't pantomime. It was important and serious, which is why it's so fucked up.
Yeah. Well, that's why they were teenagers who, it's like those teenagers who go and do this. Basically, they were a gang of teenagers, some of whom would have ended up shooting up their schools if they were in America,
Anyway,
basically. And the thing is not to sort of condemn them for being sort of, but to ask the question of how did you go so far off the fucking rails?
yeah, what safeguarding didn't happen in their lives? But
And why can't you just sit down and watch some comedy for once?
have a wank.
Just have a wank, have a laugh, have a wank. Look at your dick, it's funny. This one is pantomime though as well.
If I'm honest, before James Metcalf started singing, I was well into that. I really liked that. I think if you're gonna do the cheese and the pantomime for that type of metal, just go all out. That's like there's Sabbath and bands like that.
Well, this is late '90s album they did with the San Francisco live album they did with the San Francisco Orchestra.
That was late 90s.
Yeah.
Oh God. See, what lets it down for me is
take a lot of risks, which is also what I find endearing, is they're not scared of fucking everything up.
Musically, I thoroughly enjoyed that. I really, really did. I'm not just saying that. That was brilliant.
That song was from the early '80s, '84.
Wow.
Played with an orchestra, but it's actually that's interesting because the part I would hope was not this bit.
Drums are still too loud.
Wait for it. The voices, I like the voice.
Okay, that brilliant with the production there, with the delay tail coming back up from the vocals is fucking brilliant. Really, really
and
good.
Then you get the roar of the crowd, and there's like this meta bit when it goes.
Oh, it's literally live.
Yeah, it's literally live.
Oh, I assumed they were in a studio and that was an adaptation. I think it is.
That's why the mix is a bit ropey.
I think Jim Metcalf's voice does. What is his name?
James Hetfield.
I was close. It's kind of 80% of the way there for me. Actually, no. I think it probably is right, because if you go 100%, you're then into Nightwish territory, and it is then Europop metal. But no, there's so much in there. The mix of that was brilliant. They need to send that era Metallica back to 1984 era Metallica. and explain it.
Well,
Because there's
I
Kirk
love.
Hammett, I assume it's Kirk Hammett, like just doing a really screechy, almost Robert Fripp type solo. It's not even a solo, it's just a thing. And it was just so perfectly placed in the mix.
I mean, Kirk Hammett. Haven't really highlighted him. I think he wrote these really fantastically melodic solos in actually the sort of the first half of the career, and then I think he got, they play so much, they tour so much, he got bored and just wants to improvise stuff now. So I can't blame him for that. I think I'd love him to be able to compartmentalize, sort of go, I'm going to write something for the album, and it's going to be really so melodic and great, and then I'm going to just do what I want live. But I guess people, people want what they want.
So what are they like live? Because speaking of,
Oh, they're amazing.
but
Come
are
on,
they
they've been playing stadiums basically since the late 80s.
So I mean, but are they just straight up versions of the songs, or do they muck about with them? Well, you're saying
They
Kurt
muck
Hammett,
about,
they do muck about because you'd
and
really
they play
want
with
that.
the audience as well. And they sort of, like that gap isn't like that on the record. And a lot of the time, they're really good with audience interaction. There's a lot of, and the bassist Robert Trujillo, these days I think he's treated a lot better than Jason Newsted was.
There's that really
And
funny bit in the documentary. Goes, we're going to join Metallica, and we're going to give you $1 million and a jet ski and a flag and a veil. And do you like my hat? Do you want my hat?
he's like, he is a really, he's a really accomplished bass player in his own right, and I think he's brought back an element of musicality to sort of old man Metallica in a way
They still play
that actually sort of stands out, particularly the last two albums.
They still play bass on his knees.
Yeah, because he hasn't learned that he can actually just sort of adjust the strap. Okay, back to no basses.
So odd. It's such a strange thing that
the sound.
No, what the sound is what it is. But I mean, putting chorus on a riff just sounds shit. No, I mean the way the musicality of that is. It's not like it's sticking to one timbre or one. It sounds like it's changing key in a really odd way, like halfway through a bar. It's like dung 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 dung. I don't know. Let's try this. It's like someone trying to tune in the TV and go no too high, a little bit lower, no lower. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's quite off guarding. I mean, in a good way.
It's an interesting sort of thing of like they have the ability to sometimes take far too long on a riff. They will play everything at least 4 times, which is a bit grating. And then other times they really sort of do these really nice orchestral like or compositionally sort of like evolution of the riff. So you get a bit of the riff, and then the riff fills out in the second bit, and then the riff fills out a little bit more in the third bit, and they tease it as well. So if you listen to that again, version 1. Version 2. Version 3 at the end, Motel. So that's really well orchestrated, in my opinion. That's really sort of like we hook you in, and then we evolve it, and we bring it in, and then we bring in the changes, and we tease the change, and then you tease the whole change.
It's techno production, is what that is.
But that's 80s before techno production was a thing.
No, techno. Jeff Mills and whatever was doing it in Detroit by then. But I noticed that we're in the car, and that really famous one came on. So I'm starting to
Enter
dip.
Sandman.
Yeah. And I noticed that the start of that does the same thing. It sort of teases the riff. I know, I like that. I mean, that is, I'm probably quite a suggestible person, but you just saying, sort of explaining that appeals to me a lot more, because I'll start to hear that. I'll start to hear that happening. But
They're like, in a way, they're like a moronic version of Queen without any of the musical sort of uh, without any of the musical sort of roundness of Queen in a way. But what they do, they take that sort of like they have this attention to detail that, and they have this attention to sort of space within music, within the riff, that I don't think a lot of metal bands actually have. They embellish the riff in a way, and it's like this again, this sort of like, I think sometimes like Lars Ulrich's limitations and slightly heavy sort of playing actually sort of constructs and sort of means that they emphasize things in a different way than a lot of metal bands, in more of like almost a Ramonesy way. And they actually like, I think they actually benefit for it, because it's not, his drumming isn't sort of like everything all the time all the place. He has a lot of space in it, and he's working, and he lets the riff really breathe a lot of the time.
yeah, that is something that a lot of metal drummers are guilty of, is smothering the riff. Cool. Next one.
Questions burning, limitation of human understanding. Too quick to criticize, obligation to survive. We hunger to be alive. Yeah. All it is, ever was, will be ever. Turning through the never.
I was so surprised by a bit that I had to have the last sip of my off-brand Vimto. What?
That's Through the Never.
I can't get past James Hetfield looking like he shat himself when he sings. He does that kind of, oh no, this is nasty. I've still got to be up here for another three Metallica.
And they're one of those bands that don't really sort of do costume changes. So
No, I like that. What happened though in the middle of that? There was something. Can you play it again? I want to sort of pick it apart.
Questions burning,
This bit just sounds standard.
too quick to criticize.
Something like that.
To survive, we hunger to be alive.
What was that?
Ever was, will be ever.
They sort of litter. It's not, I've not heard it in all of them, but they do litter their tracks with just really interesting little bits I've never seen or heard before. It's the earnestness and the fart sniffing kind of like ness of some of it I still don't get on with, but I've got a far better understanding of why it's interesting and why it's, I think fun is probably almost the right word. Like the delay tail in the orchestra thing, fucking brilliant, love it. It's playful. It's actually, it's finding, so it's not just filling the space for the sake of it, but it's just doing something. I don't know what that noise even was.
I think a lot of the time, well, it's good. I think it's guitar, but they also do like a delay on the vocals, and the vocals and the guitar sort of follow each other at
Yeah,
that moment.
that's
And then
absolutely
you also
brilliant.
have, I also would say, like, again, something about Lars Ulrich, and and he's the one who orchestrates a lot of it. He doesn't write the riffs, but he orchestrates a lot of it. And he's sort of, he can swing with it when he wants to. He can swing really well within these sort of things. He's got this, um, what they brought in the Black Album was a swing, um, and a lot of it, and it's like a swagger to it.
You mean literally like a dude,
Yeah,
like a slightly old.
like there's this, and yeah, and I think this attention to detail is to me, what makes Queen so endlessly listenable, but also what makes Metallica so endlessly listenable, because you can, like, this is actually quite a hard thing to pull apart in 30-second clips because we can't, you know, afford, or, you know, and we don't really want to pay internet fees to Metallica.
It's particularly contentious with them, isn't it?
Which I don't think, you know, in hindsight, I don't think the Napster thing is completely wrong. What was insulting about it is that it's a band that sold 125 million copies, and they've just gone ahead and going, we're not okay with people listening to our music for free. Whereas you have shitloads of bands who make fuck all money, you know, who it hurts so much more. You know, like before file sharing was a thing, Fat Wreck was doing really well.
Yeah.
After file sharing, it fucked them.
Oh no, file sharing absolutely killed the music industry.
Yeah,
It really did.
You know, it's like, but it's an insult that it's like it's the biggest bands, it's the biggest major labels, you know, that are upset about it. You're already ripping us off. Why are you upset that you know, that we're getting something a little bit for free when you had your fucking payday for a long time now? Whereas the independent bands and the independent labels, you know, they were having a, you know, particularly in America, they're having quite a good time in the 90s. And it's not, they, you know, and they still, Fat Wreck still had things like on the back of their, you know, albums, compilation albums, don't pay more than this for a record.
It was in the news over here in the UK recently that last year is the first year that I think they made more money from vinyl than they have CDs. And Izzy's sort of becoming aware, my daughter's becoming aware of records now, and HMV will charge 35, 40 quid for an album now. And you're like, well, clearly they're making the money back, but people seem to think that in the 80s and 90s, when the labels were making a lot of money and the bands were making a lot of money, it was still a rip-off. You know, a record costs, it's something insane like 30 pence to press once you've mastered it all. It's a blob of PVC that's stamped. It's basically like a round big badge that you don't wear. You know, the idea that selling it even then at 15 quid for an album was still a massive, massive markup. And that's why I kind of liked when the file sharing thing really did kill a lot of stratas of the record industry. I was kind of looking forward in a way to seeing what genres would roll with it. And I think extreme metal and punk are the two, and a lot of electronica stuff as well, are the genres who have rolled with it, because they've gone, look, we know we're never going to make millions from this shit, so at least hear us and buy our merch. I mean, it's the way I think you and I operate to a certain extent now. I don't have a desire to fill my house full of physical copies of things, but I'll buy T-shirts and patches and hats and whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I've found a way of streaming my at a high level my Bandcamp FLACs onto my system, which, you know, like, I'm happy to do the Bandcamp thing.
I think that's my favorite. That's my favorite thing, way of buying music.
But what I find quite aggrieving is this. Like, I want to know what the markup of it. Like, you're buying an album that, like, has recouped its cost several times over. Take, take like a classic jazz album, like Kind of Blue. Like, why are you selling it for? You know, it's not the record shop's fault; it's the record label's fault a lot of the time. I've seen these sort of figures. The record shop is, you know, they have to make their ends meet, and they have to put a price on that album, and one that is both sellable and one that is, you know, and it's the record label who is selling them, you know, selling these records to the shop for a lot of the time for 20 pounds. And this is an album from what they've repressed from the 1959, and it probably recouped its cost in 1959. Almost all the artists on that album are dead, so then maybe you're paying sort of performance royalties to, you know, the family still a little bit, but I'm sorry, it's all profit.
Punk rock ruined her life. You know, many people just don't give a shit. It's still, that stuff still matters to us, doesn't it? Like, show me
Yeah.
the capitalism logic
Yeah,
behind this.
yeah. And that's that thing of like sometimes you see an album on Bandcamp, and I like when bands do this. They say the vinyl's going to cost this much money, but you can have the download for your choice
Mm.
of, And I always think that's a really cool attitude to take. But I also understand why some bands don't take that attitude at all. They say, we want at least £7 for this record. I think £7 is a good, and knowing that it goes, almost all of it goes to the band's pocket, feels a lot better than knowing that a lot of that money goes to the record company, who isn't going to do anything apart from pay executives with it. They're not going to invest it in new artists. They're not going to invest it in new recordings, particularly like these re-release labels. They're not even particularly going to spend particularly good money on albums being remastered. That's why you get people who are specialists at remasters, and it's a good remaster or good remix when they plaster the person's name on the front of it. If it's not that, it's someone who's got skill, but they're not particularly amazing at it. They're not like a genius at it.
But yeah,
Anyway, this is the punk rock part. Did you ever listen to the Misfits?
nah, never got it. Never got the appeal. It was dangerously close to being macho for me.
Oh no, it is macho.
No, see, that did nothing for me at all.
Oh, that's interesting. Because I think for a lot of people, Metallica were the gateway drug into the Misfits.
God, the Misfits must have done well out of that then.
And I was just thinking about the word pantomime when we were playing that, and actually it's interesting. Like Metallica have become much more pantomime as they've become bigger. They used to the attitude of the early thrash scene was sort of supposed to be more punk rock in your face, like no fuck about it, just good musicianship though. And a lot of it is DIY stuff, that early sort of thrash scene in America.
A guy called Ian Crow who used to produce albums that I've been on, he said when Metallica came out, it was incredibly exciting because they were like, hey, we can do metal. It suddenly became attainable. It suddenly became something that was a realistic proposition to do. Before then, metal had always been so kind of grand and so produced and so massive. So thrash turned all around.
Well, maybe that's a good point. I never understood what the game changer of thrash was, but maybe that's the actual game changer of thrash, is that it did for the metal community what punk rock did for rock and roll.
Yeah, I think
it brought this sort of immediacy and this sort of everyman aspect.
You don't need anyone's permission to make it, kind of thing.
And you don't need to, you don't need to wear tight leather trousers. They can be jeans. And your shirts don't have to have sleeves on them. Your hair doesn't need to be washed.
Your denim jacket doesn't need to have sleeves on it.
Yeah.
So where does stuff like municipal waste and whatever fit into this?
Well, it was the thrash revival.
I thought it was at the time. Was it not in the 80s?
No, municipal waste, I think, are they late 90s or early 2000s? There was basically, there seemed to be a point where Metallica did this sort of thing. Last track.
What is that?
That's
Kudos
the
to
memory remains
getting a
from Load.
Sorry, he managed to get a W into Donna. Now I'm from Suffolk, and we had we had vowels that we had extra letters into everything, but so just Downer.
My favourite thing that I've read today was the Sami people of the northern Nordic countries of Sweden, Finland, and Norway have 300 words for snow. The English have over 500 for getting pissed.
I think I might need to go and lay down in a little while.
Sure. So when Metallica basically sort of thrash died in the 90s, it wasn't Metallica. Well, it wasn't like just it reached a commercial peak, and it fell down, and then people like Municipal Waste brought it back, and Evil and like big time, like some point in the 2000s, as sort of like and it's always the sort of there was a generational gap essentially, and everything. Like, there's not much fast music in the 90s, weirdly. It's all pretty paced.
So was that 90s then, that track you just played?
Mid 90s, yeah.
Mid 90s.
From very controversial Load albums.
Why is it controversial?
Because they changed style so much.
That's a massive change. But then you can't do 30 years of the same feckin' thing.
Yeah. They brought in elements of like, there's aspects and hints of like, sort of southern rock in it.
Oh yeah, no, I
wouldn't say country. I wouldn't say country, but southern rock, and they sort of focused much more like I would say it was like the almost Pantera effect rather than anything else, which is like it brings in its focus is not so much on the riff but on the groove, and that was very much the focus of a lot of 90s metal, particularly like mainstream metal was the focus on the groove. Pantera was riff as well, but all there. But it was, there was a lot of groove there, and it was all, there was a lot of stuff called groove metal, which I don't know, it doesn't do much for me.
I've sort of never.
But I quite liked those albums because those were the albums that I grew. My music consciousness was sort of really blossoming at that time when they released that stuff. So I have some patience for it.
I can see it. It's accessible.
Yeah, and to do that, and to go that way after you had made, 5 albums of sort of literally sort of every album, they've never been the same band. They've never been this AC/DC Ramones thing, Cannibal Corpse thing, where you know what you're getting on that album. You know to an element what you're getting Metallica, but you don't know what version of Metallica, what they're going to emphasize, what sort of thing. And I think for me, I sort of enjoyed doing this because it's like attention to the detail. Why do I like Metallica? And I think it's the attention to detail that they put in that makes it so endlessly listenable.
I've thoroughly enjoyed this. I might give some of the late 80s albums a go.
Master of Puppets. Put on Master of Puppets when you're driving somewhere, doing something else. Don't listen to it consciously. Put it on the background. Metallica are the best band for, and this is one of the reasons I think they're so popular, is they are really good for, like, they pick out, your ears will pick out something and go, that's cool. But then if you actually pay attention, you sit down to it and you go, oh, you could have played that about 3 times rather than 24 times.
So yeah, very, very much enjoyed that. Thank you very much. My voice has gone lower now, so...
Next week, Andrew will try to convince me to like Sugar Babes.
I'll give it a go.
Go and lie down, Andrew. Do you have anything to say to the people?
Fucking hell.
Well, that's one for the wank bank.